There are places the world forgets on purpose. Velmora is one of them. If you search for it today, you'll find nothing. No coordinates, no history, no proof it ever existed. Official archives claim Velmora was a clerical error, a settlement too small to document. But older maps tell a different story. In 1935, Velmora appeared clearly, a farming town tucked against the Arden Forest, home to over 200 residents. In 1937, it vanished, not crossed out, not renamed, removed entirely. Even stranger, nearby towns kept records of Velmora for decades after its disappearance, mentioning relatives who stopped writing, trade routes that ended abruptly, and letters returned unopened. Something happened there, something so disturbing that erasing the town became easier than explaining it. And whatever Velmora tried to bury, it buried more than bodies. It buried the truth.
Velmora's people believed the land beneath them was older than the town itself. The Arden Forest wasn't just nearby, it surrounded Velmora like a wall. Thick roots twisted beneath the soil, spreading under homes and streets like veins beneath skin. Then the knocking began. Not from doors, from below. Families heard dull thuds beneath their floors late at night, slow, spaced evenly, like something striking wood from underground. Some described it as scratching. Others said it sounded like fingernails dragging across dirt. At first, villagers blamed animals. They pried open cellar boards and dug beneath foundations. Nothing. But the sounds grew bolder. People began hearing whispers through floorboards, faint voices calling their names in the dark. Children claimed someone was speaking from beneath their beds. Mothers heard cries under the kitchen tiles. And those who pressed their ears to the ground said the voices weren't random. They were learning, repeating, waiting to be answered. Velmora had always feared what lay beneath the soil, but now the soil was speaking back.
The first person to collapse was Marek Volkov. He was standing outside the bakery just after sunrise, speaking with two neighbors about the strange noises that had kept the town awake for weeks. Mid-sentence, Marek froze. His mouth hung open, his eyes widened, then he fell straight backward onto the cobblestones. But he didn't faint. When villagers rushed to him, Marek was breathing calmly, chest rising in slow, steady rhythm. His pulse was strong, and his eyes never closed. They stared upward, unblinking, fixed on the empty sky, as though watching something descend that no one else could see. Doctors from the nearest town were called. They couldn't explain it. No stroke, no seizure, no illness. Marek was alive, aware even, because when the doctor shined a lantern into his pupils, they reacted. His body was present, but Marek Volkov was gone. They carried him home and laid him in bed. That night, his wife heard him whisper, not loudly, not moving his lips, just a thin breath of sound slipping through clenched teeth. "It's closer now." By morning, Marek hadn't moved, and Velmora had its first sleeper.
Within days, more villagers fell. A seamstress while sewing, a boy beside the well, a farmer in the fields mid-step, all identical to Marek, eyes open, bodies warm, breathing steady, not dying, waiting. Families tried everything to wake them, shaking, shouting, cold water, prayer. Nothing worked. Then came the night terror. Multiple households reported the same horrifying sight. The sleepers sitting upright in their beds after midnight, spines stiff, heads tilted slightly toward the floor, listening, and sometimes smiling. One mother swore her daughter turned her head unnaturally slowly, as if responding to someone speaking from beneath the house. Another villager heard knocking under the bed immediately before her husband sat upright in sleep and whispered, "They're calling from the roots." Father Carell documented the pattern. Every time the underground knocking grew louder, another resident became the sleeper. Velmora began to realize the impossible. Whatever was beneath the town wasn't just making noise, it was reaching upward, and the sleepers were answering.
Velmora stopped sleeping. Every night, more homes echoed with the same soft sound, wood creaking, beds shifting, breath that wasn't natural. The sleepers had begun to speak clearly, not loudly, not awake, but their mouths moved with slow precision, forming words in voices hollow and dry, like air dragged across stone. Neighbors gathered around Marek's bed one night when his wife swore he was talking. They leaned closer, and Marek whispered, "We were here before the roots." Then another voice emerged from him, deeper, layered, as if two throats spoke at once. "You live above borrowed ground." Across town, other sleepers murmured the same strange phrases, always repeating similar ideas. "You built on our mouths. The earth remembers us. Open what was sealed." The priest attempted blessings again. This time the sleepers laughed, not with sound, with expression, their lips stretched into smiles too wide to be human, teeth exposed, eyes still staring downward toward the floorboards. Something wasn't trying to enter Velmora anymore. It was already inside the sleepers, and it was speaking through them.
The town elders remembered old warnings their grandparents once spoke but never explained. They gathered secretly in the church basement and shared what little fragments survived. Long ago, Velmora had not been the first settlement on that land. Another community existed there centuries before, one rumored to practice burial rituals beneath the forest soil. Not graves, containment. The elders believed something ancient had been sealed underground, and the forest roots had slowly uncovered it over generations. Now it had found a way to communicate, not by rising physically, but by entering empty minds. The sleepers weren't sick, they were being hollowed out, their consciousness pushed aside to make room for whatever had been buried long before Velmora existed. And the worst part, the voices only targeted those who listened too closely, those who answered, those who heard their names and didn't run. Velmora came to a horrifying conclusion. The sleepers were no longer people, they were doors, and something underground was opening them one by one.
Velmora's fear turned into certainty on the night the sleepers began to move. Not walk, not awaken, rise. Marek Volkov was the first. Shortly after midnight, his wife woke to the sound of floorboards groaning beneath unnatural weight. She turned toward the bed. Marek was no longer lying down. He stood beside it, eyes still open, body stiff, bare feet pressed flat against the wood. He wasn't awake. He wasn't breathing faster. He was simply standing, facing the floor, head slightly tilted as though listening to someone directly beneath him. Then his mouth opened. Slowly, wider than it should, and from deep inside his unmoving chest came a whisper that did not belong to him. "We are ready." Across Velmora, the same scene unfolded in house after house, sleepers rising silently from beds, standing motionless, facing downward. Entire families watched in horror as their loved ones responded to something beneath the earth like soldiers awaiting command.
Some sleepers began walking, but not like humans. Their movements were stiff, mechanical, steps too precise, heads twitching in sharp angles, feet dragging toward doors without hesitation. One mother tried to stop her son. He pushed her aside with strength he never had before. The sleepers weren't people anymore. They were being guided, pulled, directed by whatever lived below Velmora's soil. And the knocking returned that night, louder than ever, not polite, demanding.
By morning, Velmora had lost control. Over 40 sleepers now wandered nightly, standing over specific spots in their homes, whispering in unison, tapping the floors as if marking locations. The town believed something underground was mapping them, using the sleepers as vessels to find its way upward. Father Carell warned the mayor, if their bodies remain here, whatever commands them will fully enter. The elders repeated the ancient belief, an empty mind invites occupation, a buried body seals the door. The mayor called an emergency gathering in the church. His words shattered the town. We must bury them before something else rises through them. Families protested, mothers screamed, but terror outweighed reason, because the sleepers had begun scratching at the floors themselves, digging, trying to open paths downward. Velmora believed burial wasn't murder, it was containment, a desperate attempt to stop something older than memory from wearing their loved ones like skin. And so the townspeople prepared the graves, not for the dead, for the breathing.
No bells rang that evening. No prayers echoed from the church. Velmora moved in silence, a town united not by faith, but by terror. Every family had been ordered to prepare a coffin. Every street had been marked with fresh pits in the earth. The sleepers had grown violent after sunset. They gathered near doorways, pressing their ears to the floors, whispering to the soil beneath them. Some clawed at wooden planks until their fingernails tore and bled. Always the same words, "Let us go below." Parents tied their loved ones down. Neighbors carried bodies that still breathed. Children cried as they watched their mothers lowered into boxes. And still the sleepers smiled, not struggling, not resisting, as if they wanted to be buried, as if something beneath Velmora was calling them home. The mayor called it salvation, the priest called it necessary, the townspeople called it mercy, sealing bodies before whatever lived underground could rise through them. One by one the coffins were lowered, soil-covered faces still warm, shovels buried hands that twitched, sobs mixed with the dull thuds of earth sealing wood. Some villagers hesitated. Those who hesitated heard whispers immediately beneath their feet. By midnight, Velmora had buried 43 living residents, and then the knocking stopped. The forest fell silent. For the first time in weeks, the town heard nothing at all. They believed it was over. They believed they had sealed the doors. But underground, something had just been given bodies.
At sunrise, Velmora looked empty. The remaining townspeople stepped outside cautiously, expecting the sleepers to rise again. They never did. The buried were silent, too silent. No movement, no voices. Relief spread like breath after drowning. But Tomas, the boy hidden in the attic that night, remembered a sound no one else heard. Soft scratching beneath the soil long after burial. Not escaping, adjusting, as if something inside those coffins was learning how to move. Within days, Velmora's surviving residents began disappearing anyway, not into sleep, into the forest, One house at a time, one family after another. No struggle, no blood, just doors left open and footprints leading toward the burial fields, then vanishing. Velmora had tried to stop something from rising. Instead, they fed it hosts, and now it was walking above ground, wearing the town that buried it.
Velmora didn't fall in one night. It emptied slowly, like something feeding carefully. The first family vanished 2 days after the burials. No signs of struggle. Breakfast still on the table. Shoes left by the door. Only muddy footprints circling the house, stopping near the floorboards where their buried daughter had once stood, whispering to the ground. Then more disappeared, entire homes abandoned overnight, beds untouched, livestock wandering freely through open gates. The survivors tried to flee, but the forest blocked every path. Travelers later claimed Velmora's roads seemed to twist unnaturally, leading people back toward the town, back toward the burial fields, as if the land itself refused to let anyone leave. Within a week, Velmora was silent. No smoke from chimneys, no voices in streets, only rows of fresh graves beneath the watching pines. By winter, officials arrived, and by spring, Velmora was erased. Maps redrawn, records sealed, the town declared abandoned due to disease. No mention of burial, no mention of the sleepers, no mention of the ground that called names. But disease doesn't dig graves, and disease doesn't make entire towns disappear without bodies left behind. Velmora wasn't abandoned. It was taken.
26 years later, railway workers broke the sealed earth. They expected ruins. They found graves, hundreds of them. But when they opened the coffins, many were empty, not decayed, not collapsed, opened from the inside. Wood splintered outward, nails bent, scratch marks lining the lids as if something had clawed its way free long after burial. Some graves still contained bodies, twisted violently, fingers curled upward, mouths frozen open in silent screams, but others were hollow. Whatever Velmora buried had not stayed underground, and whatever rose had walked away with the townspeople. The government shut the site within 48 hours. Workers were warned never to speak. Official cause rewritten again. Animal disturbance. But animals don't remove entire skeletons from sealed coffins, and animals don't leave claw marks that start inside and end outward. Something woke beneath Velmora, and it didn't stop at the graves.
Tomas never forgot Velmora. He was found wandering half-starved along a forest road days after the town vanished. Clothes muddy, fingernails torn raw, eyes hollow with terror far beyond his age. Officials questioned him for hours. His answers were fragmented at first. He spoke of the sleepers standing at night, of whispers from beneath the floors, of the graves. But years later, locked inside a psychiatric ward where his testimony was considered delusion, Tomas began repeating something far more chilling. A nurse recorded his words before his death. They weren't sick. They were being called. The earth opened them. He described hearing sounds from the burial fields days after Velmora emptied, muffled thuds beneath the ground, followed by silence, then footsteps where no one should have been walking. According to Tomas, some of the buried rose, but they didn't come back as themselves. They walked like us, he whispered, but they weren't us. He believed the townspeople Velmora buried alive became vessels, bodies emptied underground and worn by whatever had waited beneath the forest for centuries. And Velmora didn't disappear because it died. It disappeared because it was replaced. Modern satellite imaging of the Velmora site reveals something unsettling. The ground sinks every year, not randomly, but in slow, expanding circles, like tunnels widening beneath the soil. Thermal scans show irregular heat pockets underground, not warm enough to be geological, too structured to be natural. No animals nest there, no birds cross it. Even locals refuse to step beyond the tree line, because sometimes, at night, hikers report hearing faint knocking beneath the earth, the same rhythm Velmora described before its burial night. 3 slow thuds, then silence, then scratching, as if something below still searches for a way back to the surface. Velmora is gone from maps, but beneath the Arden pines, the town still exists, and whatever it buried is still moving in the dark. Velmora was erased from history to make the world comfortable, but comfort is fragile when the ground remembers. Decades after the graves were sealed again, locals living near the Arden pines began reporting strange disturbances, soft vibrations beneath their homes, rhythmic tremors in the soil, like something tapping from far below. At first it was dismissed as underground water shifts, natural settling, geological noise. But then the pattern emerged. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. Always after midnight, always from beneath the forest floor where Velmora once stood. Researchers reviewing the railway excavation photographs noticed something chilling. Several coffins had collapsed inward, not outward, as though something had entered them from below before breaking back out later. Meaning whatever claimed Velmora didn't just possess the buried, it came from deeper than the graves, far deeper. And Velmora's people, in their terror, hadn't sealed the horror, they had opened it. By burying the living, they gave the darkness bodies. By erasing the town, the authorities gave it silence, and in silence it waited. Because something buried is never truly gone. It listens, it learns, and sometimes it knocks until someone answers again. Velmora no longer appears on maps, but the land where it once stood still sinks year after year, as though hollow beneath, as though a forgotten town still shifts under the soil, still breathing, still waiting for the living above to remember what was buried below. And somewhere, deep under the Arden pines, something is still knocking.